Hello, friends. First of all, what is agnostic thought? Let's discuss this.
In short, we can say it's the idea that claims the existence of God and the truth of religions cannot be scientifically proven. In other words, we cannot know whether God exists or not. Since these are subjective opinions and thoughts, there will be as many interpretations as there are people. However, we can address it at a fundamental level. The claim that faith is not scientific is absolutely incorrect. First, let's clear up these ambiguities. In fact, agnosticism is a person's own belief, in other words, their own act of closing their eyes. We could say it is turning a blind eye. That is, in reality, in the actual state of things, everything is evidence. The entire universe is evidence. It is an idea influenced by the school of skepticism in philosophy, one that tries to show traces of that influence in religion. We could say its true equivalent is completely turning a blind eye.
We previously touched on the topic that existence can be proven, but non-existence cannot be proven. Could we briefly summarize that as well?
Briefly, as a reminder from our previous lesson, the proof of existence is everything. As for non-existence, we demonstrated that it cannot be proven, especially in matters concerning the public, in issues and events that encompass the universe. The proof of non-existence cannot be established and is not scientific. Now, first of all, something either exists or does not exist. It cannot both exist and not exist at the same time. If we ask what the proof of existence is, whether it is scientific or what constitutes evidence, you know that every work of art requires an artist, every action has an agent, and every creation has a creator. But what is true scientific method? For example, how many actions are involved in a simple table?
Basically, many actions.
If the action there is not scientific evidence pointing to an agent, then in your opinion, what does a simple action in a table point to? What here is scientific and what is not scientific? Let me pose the question to you. It becomes evidence that leads from the work to the creator.
Of course, now when we see a table, even the simplest table, what do we say? There is an action in it. It is perfectly crafted, made with wisdom and purpose. In how many ways do we immediately say that there is a master of that action, an artisan? In other words, to believe in the existence of the master, there is no need to see the master with your own eyes, because the action directly points to its agent. Art points to its artist.
How scientific is it to not accept this as scientific evidence? And if we were to say here, no, it cannot be scientifically proven that this table points to a maker. Therefore, we do not accept the existence of a maker, or we cannot know whether there is a maker or not. How logical and scientific is it to adopt such a way of thinking?
It is definitely not scientific.
In other words, in the universe, everything, every action points to its doer, every work of art to its artist, every creation to its creator. This is how it goes. While everything is evidence of existence, it is in no way possible to prove non-existence. When it comes to matters concerning the universe and all times, one can prove and demonstrate their claim by showing it across all times. Therefore, in general matters, it is not possible to prove non-existence. It cannot be proven. In the Risale-i Nur collection, by leading from the work to the maker, it is proven that every work has a maker, every action has a doer, every art has an artist, and every order has an arranger. Just as even if we consider a single curve on a simple pair of glasses, it points to the existence of the optician. So if glasses point to the optician, what does the eye point to? If the glasses pointing to the optician is not considered evidence, then what kind of evidence can we reach regarding the eye? Just as the existence of a palace, with every single stone, points to its architect, even though we cannot see the architect or the builder, denying the builder or the architecture simply because we cannot see them is neither rational nor scientific. Because that palace, with every stone, its order, its measurements, its artistry, its wisdom, and so on, with as many names and attributes as it has, demonstrates its builder and architect. The Suleymaniye Mosque, in every single centimeter, completely proves the existence of Mimar Sinan. Now, if someone were to come and say, you attribute everything in the Suleymaniye Mosque to Mimar Sinan, you prove Mimar Sinan step by step with every single thing in the Suleymaniye Mosque. So if we don't attribute it to Mimar Sinan, to what would it be scientific to attribute it? So, is it more scientific not to attribute it to Mimar Sinan, or is it Mimar Sinan whom science, reason, and logic lead us to?
Actually, this has been beautifully explained in the treatise on nature. This is a very important point. The moment we don't acknowledge the architect, we have to attribute all of Mimar Sinan's qualities, his knowledge, to every single stone.
Exactly.
So what they actually accept as scientific is this. If you don't accept him, the architect, then it actually becomes a serious ignorance.
Now, in the Risale-i Nur collection, what we call agnostic thought has been completely refuted at its very foundations. especially in the treatise of Ayatul Kubra, the treatise on nature, and the 15th letter. It is an idea that has been entirely debunked and rendered obsolete. It's not possible for us to convey all those topics from there in full. Here let's point out that source. Those who wish, those who are interested, can read those sections and find answers there that will fully satisfy them both in heart and soul. To briefly touch on it, we do not see the architect, therefore we cannot know. This is a completely rhetorical and manipulative approach. For example, in the 29th word there is an expression, the absence of seeing cannot be evidence for the absence of existence. In other words, not seeing cannot be proof of non-existence. Just like this palace. This is perfect, orderly, harmonious, wonderful, artistic, wise, and so on. Every single atom of this universe points to and displays the owner and master of the Sultan of the universe. While a letter expresses itself only as much as a letter, it introduces its scribe through lines and pages. For example, when we write the letter Aleph, it expresses itself only as much as an Aleph, but about its scribe it says, my scribe's handwriting is beautiful, his pen is red, his skill is like this and that. It describes and defines him in many aspects. Therefore, this book of the universe, with all its letters, words, and sentences, points to the existence of a scribe who wishes to make himself known. In fact, the Risale-i Nur addresses this topic by mentioning one by one all the proofs in the universe. How does the Quran present evidence for the existence of God in the universe? We will discuss this topic later. If we make such a distinction, meaning, if we accept this palace but say we cannot accept its builder, we cannot know its builder, we cannot see its builder, and the existence of the builder cannot be proven, if, when we say we cannot know the builder, we mean we cannot know what color his eyes are, what his eyebrows are like, what his appearance and form are, then this is correct. However, if we say we cannot know of the existence of this builder, that would be as great a lie as the universe itself, and every atom and every kind of being in the universe would refute us countless times over.
In other words, when we see a work of art by the builder, we believe in the existence of the builder as surely as if we had seen him with our own eyes. Because art inevitably points to the artist, they are inseparable, but we cannot know the essence of the builder. What was his height, his form, his appearance, his face like, and so on. In the same way, we cannot know the essence of the builder of the palace of the universe. That's right, because we are already forbidden from contemplating his essence. However, we can know Allah through his names and attributes.
Now we gave the example of a table. So what kind of work of art is a human being, and what kinds of acts are carried out within a human? Have we ever thought about this? How could such a work of art not point to its artist? And how could it not, with every single atom, every limb, every fold, serve as evidence for its creator? Just as a painting completely points to its painter, if I were to deny the painter just because I don't see him, I can see with the eye of reason that it definitely has a master, an artist. This is scientific, scholarly, and evidential. Now, you can clearly see the magnificent difference between a simple work of art and a human being. Could a work of art like a human exist without an artist?
Of course it cannot.
The sciences, like the feelings of humanity, observe the entire universe and lay these evidences before our eyes. In other words, what all the sciences describe and explain with every single one of their subjects serving as evidence is the master, the artist, the owner, the creator of the universe. If there is anything in the world most worthy of astonishment, it is this denial. As we said, we are not being asked to understand or know the essential nature of the master, the artist, the creator. What is being asked of us is to know of his existence, and the evidences of his existence are being mentioned. If we were to ask what is the function of the intellect anyway, in other words, the intellect is there to comprehend matters with the eye of reason, where the physical eye cannot see. If we are only going to believe in what we see, then what purpose does the intellect serve? Again, this is expressed in the Risale-i Nur as follows. Those who seek everything in matter have their intellects in their eyes. But the eye is blind to the spiritual, it cannot see. There is a magnificent aphorism in the Kulliyat. For even though there are countless witnesses to his existence and oneness in the endless order and wisdom found in the beings of the universe, not to know or see him is such blindness and ignorance that even the most ignorant and blind person can understand it. In fact, I can say that among the people of disbelief, the sophists, who are considered fools for denying the existence of the universe, are actually the most intelligent. Because, since it is neither possible nor conceivable to accept the existence of the universe and yet not believe in Allah, the Creator, they began by denying the universe itself. They even went so far as to deny their own existence. There is nothing, we do not exist either. By saying this, they resigned from reason, and under the guise of reason, they escaped the boundless irrationalities of other deniers, and, to some extent, approached rationality. In other words, since it is impossible to accept the universe and not accept its creator, they said, we do not exist, nor does the universe. The sophists who say this, by denying both their own existence and the universe, are actually closer to reason than those deniers who accept the existence of the universe but do not accept its owner and creator.
In fact, those saying we cannot know are similar. By saying this, they imply nothing exists and we don't either. It's like abandoning reason.
In the appendix of the 15th word, a proof called division and partition is mentioned. This is very important. When it comes to knowing whether God exists or not, what is rational is to first accept the existence of God. One can only be justified in this claim by refuting each and every proof of God's existence and by proving his non-existence. But this is not possible. To prove that the Quran did not come from God, you would first have to accept that the Quran is the word of God, and then refute all the proofs that the Quran is the word of God. In other words, saying we cannot know and leaving it undecided is actually accepting the opposing option. It is temporarily switching sides. In reality, it is not neutrality. Now I want to ask our friends who continue with this idea the question found in the appendix of the 15th word. For example, let's say they own some property. Let it be a car or anything else. Let's say there is someone who claims that this car does not belong to them. Other people have come forward claiming ownership of this property. Let's say someone comes and says, no, that property doesn't belong to him, it belongs to me. Now, if we say to this friend, we are going to take this property from you, from now on, it is doubtful whether this property belongs to you. We will take this property from you and leave it somewhere neutral. Whoever proves ownership will get it. If we said this, would this friend accept it?
Of course not.
We will be neutral in this matter. Because it's a suspicious matter, we will remain neutral. If we say we can no longer leave this property in your possession and take it from him and leave it somewhere neutral, what should actually be done is this. All the evidence proving that this car belongs to you should be systematically refuted while the car remains in this person's possession, and only after presenting evidence that it belongs to him should it be taken into consideration. Anyone can try to claim ownership of what you have in your possession. If we were to have doubts about this and take that property from you, leaving it somewhere in the middle, we should ask these people if they would accept that.
Of course, they wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
There was a sentence like this in the Seme collection, and that part is also very important. A doubt or denial that does not arise from evidence, that is, that does not emerge based on proof, has no significance at all. In other words, if there is no evidence or proof for something, it is not even taken into consideration.
This is crucial. We must also address this separate lesson topic, which is explained in the 32nd word. That itself is a separate subject. Any possibility that does not arise from evidence has no significance, is not taken into account, and is mere sophistry. In Islamic literature, this is called tahqiqi, arbitrary assertion. It is considered meaningless speech and is not taken seriously. In other words, it is sophistry. Let's ask one more question to our friend who holds this agnostic view. If someone were to slander this friend of ours who lives honestly and say, this man you think is honest is actually a liar, a fraud, a hypocrite, a thief, a schemer, if such a slander were made against you, how would this person feel if, as a result of these slanders, their loved ones and other people started to doubt them and approach them with suspicion? And if they said to him, we used to think you were an honest person, but now we have doubts. What would he think if everyone started to approach him with suspicion about this matter? Wouldn't he also expect the following? Wouldn't he expect his loved ones, those close to him, and the people around him, before falling into doubt about him, to ask the other side for evidence and to maintain their thoughts about him in their hearts without suspicion, saying, no, we know him as an honest person. What is your evidence on this matter? Shouldn't they have asked for evidence from the other side by saying this? These points are emphasized very seriously in the Quran. This would have been his own expectation as well. Now here, do you think remaining neutral about oneself is truly neutrality? Let him think about it with fairness. Is remaining neutral about him, falling into doubt, truly neutrality, or is it actually siding with the other party?
Yes, it is siding with the other party.
It is siding with the other party. This is what is said to the claimant. If you have evidence on this matter, speak up, present it. But if you have no evidence, remain silent. It is said this person is an honest person. First of all, the existence of God will be accepted with the testimony of the entire universe. And after it is accepted that this universe has a design and a program, that it is the art of God, then if all the evidence for God's existence in the universe and the evidence in the Quran are individually refuted and evidence is presented that this universe is not from God, only then can this idea be taken into consideration. Otherwise it is sophistry, meaningless words, and domination. And to respond to this by saying we cannot know and falling into doubt is not neutrality but irreligion. It is taking the other side, partisanship, a manipulation.
So there is a very dangerous game being played here, because unfortunately, by saying we cannot know, they are making people join the other side.
Actually, there are many different points here, but there is no need to go too deep into the details of this topic. Let's outline the main points of the issue. Because our viewers can read the details of the matter themselves directly from the Risale-i Nur collection. In short, we can know of God's existence. And this is what is required of us. What we cannot know is his essential nature. In fact, Islam has forbidden contemplating God's essence, but it has made it easier for our minds to know his existence by providing evidence, preparing our intellect to believe in God's existence. Faith is entirely based on evidence. Denial, on the other hand, is a purely subjective opinion and is not based on evidence. In other words, a person can say, I do not accept it, but cannot say, it does not exist in reality. One can say, I don't see it, for me it doesn't exist, I don't believe in it, but they cannot say that it does not exist in reality, and this idea cannot be proven. This point is also very important. Yes, if those who say we cannot know mean that it is not possible to intellectually comprehend or encompass an eternal and everlasting being who created everything, then this point is already self-evident. Because with a limited created intellect, it is certainly not possible to comprehend an infinite being with all his attributes, names, and qualities. Whatever comes to mind, it is not that. Whatever comes to mind is shirk, it is not that. He is free from all those things that come to mind. This is correct. This has already not been revealed, and it has been said that it cannot be known. If Allah himself informs us of his own existence, then we can know. This point needs to be clearly distinguished. In other words, if Allah informs us, we can know of his existence. Yes, we cannot comprehend and know by ourselves. If Allah makes himself known to us through his books and prophets, then we can know. And if we deny this knowledge and turn a blind eye to these evidences, we become severely responsible. In other words, we cannot know his essence, but we can know his attributes. Indeed, the Quran mentions in an infinite manner the evidences regarding Allah's existence, his attributes, and his names. It presents the entire universe before us like a book. It proves it from beginning to end. As we already mentioned, we will be addressing this topic as well.
God bless you, you explained the unknown beautifully. For now, stay in Allah's care. See you soon.